Commander Joe Dituri, a cocktail for curing TBI, traumatic brain injury. I had an amazing talk with US Navy Commander Joe Dituri, retired, aka Dr. Deep Sea, who was just an absolute legend. In fact, he had just finished teaching a university class before we started recording. After serving 29 years in the US Navy, he is still giving back to the special operations community. He spoke so knowledgeably about the use of ketones to support and enhance warfighter performance, preventing seizures and helping brain performance. We went on to speak about transitioning from military to civilian life and why are so many special forces guys so good at getting qualified as professors, doctors, and master's degrees in their later lives. He speaks about the bridge between military and academia. Such a fun and charismatic guy, he was a joy to speak to. But he really surprised me when he spoke about his own car accident and traumatic brain injury. You can literally see my jaw drop when he revealed he has developed a cocktail for fixing TBI and therefore suicide prevention at the University of South Florida. Doing everything he can to increase cerebral blood flow, the studies show that they are curing traumatic brain injury at his university. Now, please read that again. This is a must watch or listen for anyone who knows someone who plays contact sports, is current or former military, or someone who has, or someone who knows someone who's experienced a traumatic brain injury and is in trouble. Thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, high performance living coach from eatwellmovewell.net. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Subscribe for more amazing tips, interviews, and wisdom from phenomenal guests, and get your free copy of my 5-day meal plan and exercise ebook at realketonesaustralia.com. This show is sponsored by realketonesaustralia.com, the best and most effective ketone supplement on the market to reduce anxiety, enhance brain performance, and supply twice as much energy as glucose. You can find all my former shows on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google, Amazon, and Libsyn. Thanks for watching and listening. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to the Eat Well Move Well radio show. Welcome to my guest, Commander Joe Dituri.
Hey, how are you guys?
Man,
thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. You know, all the way from Tampa, Florida. I really enjoy the modern technology to allow me to speak to someone on the other side of the world. It just really blows my mind.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. And, you know, COVID did a lot of things, but COVID made the world a lot smaller. All of a sudden, Zoom and Skype and, you know, so yeah, we're one small benefit from COVID.
It's amazing. So shout out to Lisa Tamati for connecting you and I.
Yes.
Your background, I went to do the intro and there's no chance. You got 3 paragraphs there, but you know, I introduced you as Commander Joe Dituri. You know, you spent 29 years, I think it is, in the military. For the listeners, your last posting was Special Operations Command. These are all fancy words. Some of the guys and girls know it from the veterans side of the show, which I will actually speak to with you about transitioning wise down the track. But a lot of the people wouldn't know what those are, more the health and wellness side. But Joe, I'd love to just get your sort of crayon style, where you sort of came from, your background, your military time, and where you're at now. Is that okay?
Sure. Do you want me to go through that chronology or?
Yes, please.
I could do that. Yeah. I love talking about myself, but it's one of these like necessary evils because you got to know the person's bias, right? So yeah, I spent almost 28 years in the Navy. I was an enlisted guy first, and then I became an officer. And you know, I worked my way up through the ranks, and I retired as a commander. My last posting was at Special Operations Command, and I was the chief engineer and program manager for Dry Combat Submersible. So we basically theorized that we could do a pressurized submersible and keep the guys dry. And before
Wow.
that, I was with Kirk Parsley at Deep Submergence Unit. Before that. So and then when I retired, I fancied myself kind of wanted to do something to help the special operations community. So I was doing that, and I wrote a paper. And we'll get into the paper because you specifically asked about it. It's ketones, ketogenic diet, and staving off central nervous system oxygen toxicity. Well, when I wrote that paper, I went to go submit it, and the people at the medical society said, "I'm sorry, you're not a doctor. You can't submit a paper." I'm like, "Wait, is it hard?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, it's very hard." And I was like, "Here, hold my beer. I'll be right back." And I went and got a PhD in biomedical engineering, and then I came back and I was like, "Here's my paper, nanny nanny boo boo." It was like, okay, now we have to listen to him. Shit. So,
That's a hell of a story, man. I must ask, being an army guy, what does the rank of commander equal to in the military and in the army?
Lieutenant colonel. So in the Army, it's a lieutenant colonel.
Yep.
It's one before the star. It's
Yep.
silver oak leaf. I don't know. I don't recall what the military ranks for Australia are, but I thought they
pretty
were
much the
similar.
same. Pretty much
Oh,
the same.
okay.
Yep. Oh, that's interesting. I always wondered with the Navy. We had some Navy guys in the squadron, but yeah, no idea what those fancy words were.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said there. It was quite telling. You wanted to give back to the special operations community because it is a community, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's brothers and sisters in arms doing sort of the same thing as everybody else, and but there's so many different sides. Like Kirk was initially, Dr. Parsley was special warfare. In our military, special warfare was the SEALs. So just to be clear, I was diving, explosive ordnance, mine countermeasures, and that was my side of the house. And realistically, I was more of a diver and deep submergence guy than anything else. So it's like you're called special operations, but it's not special operations for the Army. So it's a small difference, but yeah.
No, I do. Now you're over in Tampa. Man, I was just thinking then all the big names are over there. I know they got Aspie there with Jacob Wilson and Dr. Ryan Lowry. I think you've got Dr. Mary Newport over that way. Wow, it's really the hub of research, and of course Dr. D'Agostino, University of South Florida, Ken Ford, all those guys.
Yeah. Dom and I wrote a chapter in a book together. D'Agostino, we wrote a chapter in a book together. So he's a great dude. As a matter of fact, I was going to do my PhD with him initially, and then his sort of stature fell through at the university, and he got so if I had to pick another doctor father, they call them. So I had to find another doctor father. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff going on in the USF.
I think a friend of mine, Dr. Eleanor or Professor Eleanor Gross, I'm not sure which way it is. I still haven't figured out the difference between a professor and a doctor, but she's over there in Switzerland. But she had Dom as her doctor father as well, doing work into migraines, which migraines and ketones, which is of interest as well.
Aha. Interesting. I did not know that, but there is a close correlation. Remind me, migraines and PFOs, patent foramen ovale. So there's a correlation going on there, but yeah, maybe causative.
Well, I think we'll roll down the ketones way. I'll come back to transition military wise, and then maybe look at motivational speaking, because that blew my mind. Your background and where you're at now is phenomenal. Yeah, right now in the civilian space, which is everybody apart from the military, it's all ketones and weight loss, a little bit of ketones and performance. But you and I both know they're invented for warfighter performance. But could you talk about your background with the paper and your background into ketones?
Right. So when divers lock out of a submarine or a submersible, they tend to want to use pure oxygen because it limits the decompression obligation, right? So we want to make sure that our decompression obligation is minimalized or minimum, if you will. But submarines and submersibles can't really come really shallow, otherwise you'll see them, right? So, and you know, a nuclear powered submarine, a U.S. Navy nuclear powered submarine, your submarines can go a little shallower than ours can, but ours can basically do periscope depth at about 60 feet or so. So that's pretty deep, and that's a high partial pressure of oxygen. And one of the symptoms of central nervous system oxygen toxicity is a convulsion, right? So when I retired from the military, I was talking with my friend, Dr. Harry Whalen, and he worked with Kirk and I at Deep Submergence Unit, and he was on the reserve component side, but he's like a brilliant mind, right? So he was on the reserve component side, and he'd come in once a month and you know, keep him working together, and we shared stuff. And he said, hey, I have been using the ketogenic diet to stave off epilepsy in children. And I said, He's like, the seizures in epilepsy, epileptic seizures. And I said, wait. What's the mechanism of action for that seizure as compared to hyperbaric oxygen? And he said, we don't know. I said, what do you mean we don't know? He's like, oh, there's so much that we don't know. And I'm like, and this is the one takeaway from this whole thing is the more we learn about science, the more we realize, yeah, we really don't know. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that we just kind of assume. Right. But we know that ketosis in the ketogenic diet, a 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio sort of diet with 0 carbs, no more than 10 or 15 net carbs. Right. It is controlling epileptic seizures. Maybe it'll work. So, you know, I didn't know any better. I just went right to man testing. Right. Because I'm a man. I'm going to get in the water. I'm going to do this thing. So I start doing it on myself and these 3 other people that wanted to do it. We did a series of deep dives off of Maui. We checked our ketone level, and sure enough, everything turned out well. So that was the predecessor to all of these new innovative things. And like, you know, they're studying rats. So like when I went to go to Dom D'Agostino to talk to him about, you know, ketones and ketogenic diet and maybe becoming a PhD student, he was like, how did you get to man testing so quickly? I'm like, oh, we just did. I'm not that smart. We just did it.
That's phenomenal. And it always comes back to the end user and you physically doing it. You know, I say when people read about these ketones, and I've been taking them for 7 years now, you can read all the stuff, but just take them and feel the difference in how you perform.
Right. I mean, look, ketones are great. There's all kinds of problems with ketones in the ketogenic diet that is secondary. You know, diverticulitis comes, you don't drink enough water, you have problems. Yep. But overall, it could be a useful thing for you. And it's not the new fad weight loss thing. You know, it helps brain performance, for crying out loud. It staves off cancer, for crying out loud. There are many things that ketogenic diet does. So, and, you know, just even getting off the sugar and the carbs and any of the carbs, like in general, it's like, oh, you know, we were propped up and told a lie. To be truthful, we were told a lie that, oh, carbs are good, you should have more bread than anything else. No, that was because that's what we could afford back then, you know. So we turned the pyramid upside down, and now we have all this meat.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was actually doing a live stream with a Delta Force guy last week and his community, and I was trying to get in there, and I was brought on to speak about the myths of the keto diet and mistakes and things, because especially Americans, and then a little of the mainstream, they tend to make that mistake with the diet of just eat all the fat. But I was saying, you know, carbs aren't good or bad, it's how you use them. It's like a gun. And the keto diet is a tool for the right person, right time. And we're seeing now, you know, cyclical might be clever health-wise and things. But just diving back into the science there, you know, you found out about the ketogenic diet. I like to use the example, you know, the Navy literally talked to Dom and said, you know, what can you do for our divers? He's like, well, the ketogenic diet's good. And the Navy basically goes, well, there's no way our guys are gonna do this diet, so figure it out.
Exogenous ketones, boom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I think that was a good get. I mean, you know, we saw that coming, and it was kind of a slow roll, because, you know, if you look at rats, his study with rats, I think, said 5 atmospheres on pure O2 and no seizures. I'm thinking to myself, that's pretty incredible that you can go that deep on pure oxygen and not have any seizures or seizure activity. That's pretty impressive. So, maybe it's prophylactic to central nervous system oxygen toxicity seizures. The jury's still out. I mean, there's no hard, this is definitely works, no kidding scientific proof, but the jury's looking good right now. And you can understand that, the body breaks things down. And if you're able to get yourself into anabolic or catabolic states, right? You can do a lot of different things. So it really is kind of cool if you can change yourself. I will give one warning though. What I found, and we instituted this policy from it, when you go into ketosis, because people don't live in nutritional ketosis all the time. Some people don't, but I'll be honest with you, geez, I really like a slice of pizza every now and again, right? Or a bagel, right? I'm a New Yorker, I got a pizza and bagel, right? So but when you go in and out of ketosis, your mind gets fuzzy, right? So we called it the dumbs. I don't know what you guys called it, but when you're going into ketosis and you're ramping up, when you're still on the low end of ketosis and you haven't developed that nutritional ketosis yet, or the the exogenous ketosis sort of thing, you tend to not be able to think. So what I instituted was, hey, two of us need to do this one thing that we're doing if one of us is going into ketosis, right? So we all need to do this and double check each other's work, because I mean, you're talking about life support equipment, and at that point, 140 meter dives, 130 meter dives. I mean, it's quite a deep dive, and you're worried, but yeah.
Yeah, that's man, that's a different world. I was never really a water guy. In my role, it was always choppers and planes and hitting the stronghold. But I like to say I can swim I can swim well with flippers and a gun, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So,
that's all right. I don't do well taking a stronghold. So, we all have our strengths and weaknesses.
Let's roll back. You joined the Navy. What, that's a lifetime ago for both of us. What made you join the Navy, and what did you sort of roll into there?
So I almost had no option. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but I did apply to a bunch of different colleges, and they kind of sort of went, "No, you're not really smart." And I'm like, "No, I'm really, really smart. I really am." So I did real well on the math side and didn't do very well at all on the English side of the SAT. So unfortunately, that left me with an overall not very good grade. So I didn't have a whole heck of a lot of options. No university was chomping at the bit to have me come on board. So I wanted to get out of New York. I knew that, New York is a great place to be, but it just wasn't the place for me. So wanted to get out of Dodge, and this was my e-ticket ride, right? So joined the military, and then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, you guys wake up early in the morning? Check, I do that already. You guys go for a workout? Check, I do that already. This is pretty easy. Okay, what do you, and all you have to do is tell me everything I need to do. I'm like, hashtag winning. I just stayed. It wound up being for me, it wound up being a good fit. And, it's a good place to have been from in today's day and age. Maybe it's not such a good place to go to, but, because we're at war, or we're supposedly at war, but whatever. So there was that harrowing part of it, but realistically, I stumbled into the right lighting, and I got very, very fortunate, and I didn't come back in a body bag. So there's goodness to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Did you go in as a diver? I mean, what was your trade when you went in?
Right. So I went in as an enlisted nuke. So I was a machinist mate nuke. And while I was in nuclear power training pipeline, I wrecked my motorcycle on the East-West Expressway on I-4 on a turn, and they realized that I had something called eczema. Well, my hands would get these little bumps on them. And if you're working in radiation, you can't have bumps on your hands. So they gave me my choice of any school in the Navy. And long story short, I mean, I decided to go down this road that involved diving, sort of. And then when I got commissioned from that tour, after that tour, I got my commissioning program. And when I did that, I got commissioned, wanted to be a special operations officer from the beginning. And then I, got selected and kind of went on from there. So.
And was diving something you did in your job, or was it recreational? Because to go down that deep sea sort of route is very, it's very niche, isn't it?
Right, it really is. So I became a military diver. I became a civilian diver as well, because I said, this is like skydiving, like, you skydive, right? But when do you get good at skydiving? When you do it a lot, right? So I wanted to be good at my trade. So I became a better civilian diver, which made me a better military diver, and it made me be able to function better underwater. Same thing with skydiving. I did the very same thing, right? So, but you have to kind of do both together so that you can get better at everything that you're doing. I mean, if you lived in the myopic world of the military, it's quite unfortunate, but people in the military get real good at this one book, and that's the only thing they can do. Well, I'm sorry, I don't believe that that's the case. I don't believe all the information is in one book. Maybe 60 books, but a bunch of people in the military focus on that one thing, and that's it. So I think there's ways around that. So
I've got an interesting question for you. It popped up in my head before when you said you were denied for university at the start. Yourself, Dr. Kirk Parsley, his background for the listeners, he was a Navy SEAL, he was a high school dropout, and then, in his adult years, his later years, he left the Navy, became a doctor, and went back to the Navy. There's a story of a SAS, he's probably a Lance Corporal for British SAS, a Lance Corporal, and he got out, and now he's becoming a professor. So I've never asked this question to someone before. What do you think's happening with their adult education wise?
yeah,
You're top of your field, and we know none of us like blowing our own smoke, but it's clearly there. Kirk is top of his field. This guy was phenomenal. This 2-2 guy. What do you think's happening adult education wise that we're late bloomers, as it were?
right. So people ask me, like, kind of, how did you get on this thing all the time? And I'm like, look, I feel like the same bloke that I was, 30, 40 years ago. And I still look in the mirror and I have residual self-image. I'm like, who's the old guy? This is weird, right? So I feel like I'm still 25, and I still act like I'm 25 most times. But what we do is we have the ability to look at something and go, well, how hard could this actually be? Let's pretend that I briefed really important people in high level positions before. Do you really think that it's hard to get a doctorate or go back to medical school or whatever? So it's interesting. I finished my PhD, and part of my PhD is biomedical engineering. Part of my PhD is the first year of med school. So I did the first year of med school. So I finished my PhD, and I'm like, you know what? I should go back to med school, and then I could be a doctor, commander, Mr. blah, blah. And I'm like, no, stop. Cut it out. So, we just learn how to achieve things like that. And it winds up being like second nature. When I defended my dissertation, I mean, literally, I was the smartest guy in the room on the subject, which is the way that your dissertation should always go. You should always be the smartest guy in the room. But when I walked in with this gravitas, having briefed, very, very, very important congressional members, and, briefed House Armed Services Committee, Senate Armed Services Committee, it's like, I walked in there, and when I briefed, they were like, holy Shinto, that was the best defense I've ever seen. And I'm like, it was a Tuesday, it was a walk in the park. Why? Because I knew the material, and I had that confidence from having done all the briefing before. That's where the kids that just go right into college and they go academia their entire career, and they're 25, 26, 27, 28 years old, when they get their doctorate, they're like, I don't really know. I think I know this sort of. No, but guys like you and I were like, oh, stand back, hold my beer, watch this.
100%. 100%. Acts like you've been there before is a quote from some of the guests that I love, but we don't have to act because we have been there before.
I sometimes tell this story as I was going through my doctorate. Now, I was a commander, right? So commander in the Navy, they're like, tension on deck. They stand up, you walk in the room, you sit down, when you stand up, everybody stands up, sort of thing. Okay, great. While I'm doing my doctorate, I'm going back and forth communicating with a young professor at the university, and she is a doctorate in carbon dioxide studies. So I'm going back and forth with her, and I'm like, Dr. So-and-so, and then a whole string of stuff that I was saying. And then I accidentally, not accidentally, on purpose, I emailed her back. I said, oh, doc, by the way, I forgot this one little thing. We could also do this. And she writes back to me and she goes, I'll have you know that people with 3 letters after their name in this university are called doctor and not doc. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, I completely understand. You're right. You're right. I'm wrong. You're skinny. I'm fat. You're pretty. I'm ugly. But I'm thinking to myself, you don't even know. Like I'd walk in the room and people would say attention on deck. And now I'm talking to you who's 27 years old and has a PhD, and I want a PhD. Yep, you're right. You're right. Pusa, like, oh my God, you're such a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
But all her self-worth was tied up in having a PhD when she was 27 or whatever, 28. I have no idea. But younger, that's for sure.
It's a different world, isn't it? Oh gosh, I got so many things I'm thinking about there. I was
Academia needs guys and gals like us, that experience. And oh, by the way, you want to solve real problems, you need the bridge between the military, who knows the real problem, and academia. That's what we need. And we need to fill this position with a person who has, a doctorate in engineering and then can do the special operations stuff to bridge that gap. If you don't know the state of the art, you don't know the art of the possible, and you don't know the mission. So it's like, either I got to teach you one or the other, and the academics can't learn the military mission, and the military mission normally don't do the academics. So, because by the time they're retired, they're like, screw this, I'm so done.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I interviewed a guy, Dr. Dan Pronk. You might know him. So he was the regimental doctor for SASR, so Australian SAS here. Interesting cat, because regimental doctor, and just paint the picture for the listeners, he's the general practitioner, the go-to doctor for the unit, which is Australian SAS. But when he got there, he said, I want to do selection for SAS.
Really?
Yeah, this is phenomenal. So this is what we call geeks in our world, officers that are got brains. And he wanted to do selection, and he passed selection, and he did operator training. So here's someone that's exactly what you're saying, and kind of like Kirk, but in reverse. He's a smart, intelligent professional, and he's a special operations shooter. And in fact, when he was in Afghan, he saw more action than many guys. But he's got that both worlds, and that's where the key is. You're absolutely right, Joe. Ken Ford, Professor Ken Ford over your way, same deal. He was an airborne soldier.
Yeah. No, I've heard that as well. Yeah, no, that's like you say, you got to be able to bridge that gap. And I think it's too hard for the academics to learn the operator side, but the operators, we're success oriented, right? It's like, look, I can do this. How hard can it be, right? And you just kick down the door and just act like you own the place, right? Like you said, act like you've been here before.
Exactly. Well, speaking of that, what are you doing now? You're out of the military. What is your focus? What are you doing now in the world?
So I teach at the University of South Florida. I just taught bioastronautics today. It's life support, space system stuff. And interestingly enough, 6 months ago, some 6 odd months ago, it is Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness Month. And on September 7th, I was struck by a motor vehicle while I was in my own motor vehicle. My 47 Chevy got totaled, and I got a 8mm hemorrhagic stroke in the prefrontal cortex on the left side. And before you know it, I was knocked out in the car, didn't wake up until I was in the ambulance, got to the hospital. I'm like, who are you? Who am I? Where am I? What's going on? So they're like, hey, you have a brain bleed. You're not doing well. We're going to put you in the ICU. And I'm like, wait, what? So I got on this road of self-recovery of how to fix traumatic brain injuries, because now not only was I working on fixing traumatic brain injury before, but now I actually have a freaking traumatic brain injury. Now what do I do? And I mean, it's so hard being trapped in here and trying to fix this thing while it's broken. It's like flying the plane while you're assembling it, for Christ's sake, right? So it's insane. So I tried a whole bunch of failed maladies. I tried a whole bunch of successful maladies. I kind of came up with this cocktail of sorts for fixing traumatic brain injury. And then what I did, starting on December 28th of this year, I came to the startling conclusion that I was going to move the damn needle because I was tired of our brothers and sisters in arms putting a bullet in their chest. I was done with it. I said, this year I'm moving the needle. I don't care what I have to do. So I started a study and I threw every single malady at traumatic brain injury simultaneously, everything to increase cerebral blood flow. And it worked.
Oh,
and
man.
Right now, we are at the tail end of the study, and the preliminary results are we're curing traumatic brain injury. Now, I know that that's a grandiose statement. That is a huge statement, but people can be fixed. And the problem is everybody's looking at it as if it's a single thing. It's a physical ailment. It's not. It's physiological, physical, and psychological. And if you don't approach all three and vet all three and work all three, you are going to have a systemic problem and it's just going to come back, right? If you don't address it with trauma-based, cognitive-based therapy, you're going to have a recurring issue because it's just going to keep slingshotting you back into fight or flight, right? So you can treat the physiological side, you can treat the physical ailment, you can increase the cerebral blood flow and so forth and so on. You can do all that, but if you don't address the problems, you're going to come right back to the situation where you're at. So, like I said, the preliminary results are looking good right now that we are fixing people with traumatic brain injuries and we're doing great things. So I'm super hopeful, super excited. And not one of these things is bad for you. So we're talking about hyperbaric oxygen. We're talking about neurofeedback therapy. We're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. We're talking about this therapy called SET therapy, which massages the occipital lobe in the back of the spine, and it increases the blood flow or the transfer of cerebral spinal fluid, increasing cerebral perfusion, right? So that including some electrical impulse testing that we've been doing. And we're also doing computer-based training on these people. I said neurofeedback before, massage-based therapy. And like I said, it's all this, and we put it all together in an 8-hour day. So you are at my facility for 28 straight days, doing 8 hours a day in the facility, doing all that stuff combined. Why 28 days? Everybody's like, why 28 days? Because it's habitual, man. It's habit forming, right? And you got to get back to that habit of making brain-derived neurotrophic factor or brain-derived growth factor or VEGF or HIF-1 alpha. I mean, your body knows how to make this stuff. It's not just the habit of taking care of yourself. You do something for 28 days and you will continue to do it. Yeah, that's great when it talks about the gym and going to the gym. But your brain also has to learn, and it also takes 28 days to remember, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be making brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Damn it. Okay, I can do that. And this is why we're doing hyperbarics twice a day. Lower partial pressure, but hyperbarics twice a day. So we're trying to increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor to get that lawn seed stimulated so that you can stimulate the growing of new synaptic pathways or the restoration of synaptic pathways, if you will.
It's not often when I interview a guest that my jaw drops at all, because normally we're coming from the same page, but I'm blown away. What sort of partial pressure are you doing with the hyperbaric?
1.75, because it turns out when you test the ratio of the theta wave to the beta wave, or theta wave to alpha wave, when you test the alpha theta ratio, the closer the ratio is together, the lesser the partial pressure of oxygen, right? So it's real interesting. You don't need a high partial pressure of oxygen because oxygen is what? It's a vasoconstrictor. So vasoconstricting, when you're up at a high partial pressure, 2.5. As a matter of fact, Paul Harsh just came out with a paper today that talked about 2.5 being a very bad actor for traumatic brain injury, because it chokes off the oxygen coming to you as opposed to letting it flow. So, you get them down out of the central nervous system oxygen toxicity realm, put them down at like 1.7. Paul was suggesting as low as 1.5 or maybe even 1.4. Personally, I think that's low, but look, I didn't do all his research. He did. So, but he's a giant in our field. So, who the hell am I to argue with him? But as long as we're fixing people, and I'm not giving you benzodiazepams, I'm not giving you, I'm not putting you in drug-induced comas, I'm not, giving you these wild hallucinogenics or, just dulling the pain, why do people fail traumatic brain injury protocols? They have to be 2-time failures. They have to fail talking to people. Well, if I'm going to talk to you and you're a psychologist and you haven't spilled blood in the same mud with me,
yeah,
I'm not talking to you. There's not a chance in the world. Yeah. Having been that guy, I tried to go down that road. I don't talk to them well. That's just me, and I suspect most people are like that. Most of the operators are like that. And the second thing you fail is drugs. Why? The only thing drugs do is successfully change you from being you. And now you're less you. Okay, well, that's not helpful. I like me. I just want to fix me, So everything we're doing is like easy, low-hanging fruit, very minimal side effect, and all goodness comes out of it, right? I mean, we're helping you be happier. We're all working, we're all family. We're doing life coaching on you. You're around brothers that have spilled blood in the same mud with you, and we're talking. We have we have brothers breakfast and combat lunches. Where we all just go out together and go have lunch. It's like, all right, let's just go together. We're going to grab lunch and then come back. And keep doing your physical therapy, your psychological therapy, your hyperbaric therapy, your neurofeedback therapy, whatever it happens to be.
You listed all the things that we naturally do in those after TBI, and then pushing on to whatever your taste is, post-traumatic stress, major depression, all those things. We use that alcohol, we use those drugs, we use that psychologist and things, and they're all band-aids. My question for your cohort and further treatment after the study comes out is, were they acute, fresh TBIs, and or were they chronic, long-term symptoms, and they've come in for help as well?
Great question, because you can have a traumatic brain injury that's here, up over my head, and one that's way down below my chin, right? So no, they were all chronic. Everybody that we've seen so far has been chronic, except for me, who was acute, right? So I was very acute, and then, we put it all together based off of my profile, and then we said, wait, maybe we can work this out. And I mean, mind you, this is funded out of the International Bank of Joe, right? There is no global funding for this. There's no Merck manufacturer or Pfizer or Moderna, funding this study. We're doing this ourselves, and all the providers are giving of their own time. The cognitive behavioral therapist, the SET therapist, the neurofeedback therapist, the hyperbarics, we're all giving of our own time, effort, and energy so that we can get this done, so that we can help people. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We go down the wrong road when it comes to traumatic brain injuries, I think, Joe's opinion. And we got to look at helping these people as opposed to just putting a Band-Aid on them for now,
I'm really stunned, Joe, and that's why I hit the record button so early on these shows, because we get to know things organically. For the listeners, I mean, I was preaching the choir here, but TBI. Somebody gets a punch in the head, or they're a breacher, they take an explosion, or they're in a rugby game, they get a hit. That's an acute thing. There's an energy deficit. People are looking at prophylactics, like do they want to have ketones on board so that have that secondary energy source while they're repairing. But DJ Shipley, and SEAL Team 6 guy, you might know him. He's out now and very public. Him and I were breachers, never on the same team. I'm a completely different country, but we're all breachers. And one of his stories, he had to actually breach himself almost to to kill a bad guy and save the whole team's life. But we get these explosions going off near our heads so many times. In my poorly educated idea, that causes damage that can't be undone. And the reason I mentioned him is he's asked me to speak to the scientists when I do. Like I talked to Ken Ford, I talked to the All Blacks strength and conditioning trainer about TBIs. But here I've got you, Joe. So I'm a crayon guy. Are you saying someone like DJ, who was, 10 years IEDs, breaching all those things, can he come to you and I'm trying to get this right, is your paper showing results on someone of his age and damage?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, everybody that has been in the study so far has been of advanced age. Is that the right word? What are we?
Yeah, we're old men, man.
So yes, of advanced age with chronic, chronic concussions, sort of a problem. So what we're also doing is, look, I mean, there's a lot of cross-pollination between chronic traumatic encephalopathy, football players, and chronic concussion syndrome or multiple concussion syndrome, right? Yep. So, and then what happens is your body will make BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It'll make all these growth factors, and you will heal over a period of time. You will. It's a matter of time. So please, I need everybody to stop saying, "Oh, I'm broken, I can't heal." No, you can. The brain is incredibly plastic. It's incredibly elastic. It moves, it shapes, it changes regularly. So we can get you better. I opine everything that I'm doing, for sure, scientifically, is not going to hurt you, right? So if everything I'm doing could help you and is not going to hurt you and is going to make you feel better, why wouldn't you be doing it, right? And like I said, I'm not making a dime. I'm fixing a fucking problem right now, right? I'm just trying to kick the door down and fix the problem. I'm trying to preach, right?
Yeah.
So, and I have nothing at stake here. I don't care about a reputation. I literally care about fixing the guys. I have guys that I continue to treat. They don't have a pot to pee in. I don't care. Come on. Any military vet that walks in my clinic, you don't have money, I'm still treating you. I don't care. I want you better because it's the right thing to do, because our government should be taking care of us. Sometimes they don't do such a great job when it comes to the traumatic brain injury because it's the hidden wound, right? It's a hidden thing. You can't really see it. But I know that Johnny is different from when he was, before he left and when he came back. He's way different. And that may have just been because he saw some shit, or he did some stuff, or he was in an explosion. Do you know how little change in gravitational force it takes to give yourself a traumatic brain injury?
No.
1.3 Gs, 1.3 times gravitational acceleration. That is a hard stop in a car, for Christ's sake. So you could get a traumatic brain injury from jamming on your brakes in a car and getting restrained by the seatbelt and not going forward, and your head does that snap. Yep. Or, roller coasters like 4 Gs, right? I mean, come on. All these adventure-seeking rides, So you don't really need a lot. But like you said, I could present as a drooling idiot, or I could present as a high-functioning, reasonably okay guy that just needs to get a little better. So we've had both of those, and we're helping both of those type cases. So I don't know. Look, man, I'm not an MD. By no means am I a medical doctor, but so science wins over bullshit every time. But what works. And and I'm not drugging you, and I'm not putting you in a corner, and I'm not taping you down, and I'm not changing you. I'm helping. So.
Oh, I'm lost for words, which is difficult as an interviewer, but I'm excited. After this, I'll connect you with DJ and see how that rolls. I'm sure it'll take off. But man, when does your study finish, and what's the publishing time frame?
So there are literally thousands and thousands of pieces of data, right? Because we did diffuse tensor imaging before, and we will do it after. It ends on Friday, which is tomorrow, right? So, but like I said, these people got better in the first 2 weeks. They reported market improvement, right? So we did EEGs beforehand, EEGs afterwards. We're checking brain waves. So we're putting all this stuff together in several thousand pieces of data. But, like I said, the proof is really in the pudding. We got one football player and one military veteran who was a Purple Heart wearing guy who lost his entire platoon and pretty well got banged up and beat up. And, we're teaching coping mechanisms, and, it's that brother talk. It's the life coaching that comes from all this. Like I said, we're treating the entire human being, right? If you ask somebody what's wrong with a plant, somebody will say it needs water. Somebody will say it needs sunlight. Somebody will say it needs food. And when you're a researcher, what you want to do is you want to figure out which one of those three things is exactly what's helping it.
Yeah.
Well, fuck that. Because if you put a plant in direct sunlight for 24 straight hours, it's going to be burned up. And if you feed a plant too much water, it's going to drown. And if you don't give it any food, or you give it too much food and you don't give it sunlight and water, it's going to die. You need all this stuff simultaneously. And why aren't we throwing the kitchen sink at these guys? They deserve it. Why aren't we throwing the kitchen sink at them? I mean, it's not even like it's a money thing. We're just not doing it because I don't know why. I'm not really sure. But I don't want to even get involved in the politics. I just want to be like, when you're a researcher, everybody's looking for that one thing, but really it's the synergistic effect of all of the things that's working together. Everything works towards increasing cerebral blood flow, which hopefully will give you more synaptic pathway growth and give you more, neurogenesis is the process that we're trying to stem, right? We're trying to branch and grow and make new superhighways and, work on your neuroplasticity and, get back to being semi-normal. We were never, I don't know about you, I was never really normal. So this is like get back to Abby, right? Abby normal.
Not right in the head is how I normally describe me and my team. I actually think I might have a little bit of an answer for you, a little bit of insight into that. I can see just by your body language and your tone, that little bit of confusion. Dr. Dan Pronk, like I said, former regimental doctor and operator and former CO of the SAS here in Australia, his brother Ben Pronk, and another guy actually wrote a book called The Resilience Shield. And it's all about how can we fall over now, just turn into a drooling mess of post-traumatic stress and depression when we were going so well on operations. Long story short, there was a chapter there talking about complex systems versus complicated systems. And he went, I'm a fireman now, I'm a shooter, I'm a crayon guy. Basically he said, if you can write a manual on it, so your Chevy has a manual, then
Yep.
it's complicated. But if you can't write a manual on it, and this is what's got my train of thought, the jungle, you don't know how that works. That's complex and it's not linear.
Right.
And, you're like, well, the scientists trying to find that one thing. That's logic, that's writing a manual, but we're the human beings. And that's where I think your success has been phenomenal with that, is throwing all those things at it, not making it worse. These things push forwards. And yeah, maybe just a little bit of insight into complex versus complicated from someone much smarter than me.
No. That's a great way of putting it. And look, man, life is all about connections, by the way. So please, at the end of this, you've got to connect me with these cats that because if I'm stumbling upon the right stuff and I can talk to them, or they can educate me and go, hey, you're stupid. You should have done this, that, or that. Okay, fine. I like talking to smart cats that are doing great things. So let's do that,
Absolutely. I'm stunned. And happy, so happy. I'd like to finish off, and this actually, I don't know how I pulled it off, but ties it all together. Could you please speak to your personal journey about transitioning from the military into civilian space? What was your experience transitioning, highs, lows, things that were difficult, things that were easy, and possible advice moving forward for people in the same space?
Okay, so first of all, if you look at this from a ground perspective, I was in the Navy for 27 years, 8 months, 19 days. That means literally I have to live till I'm 55 years, 6 months, something like that, 4 months. I can't even do the math right now. I have to live till I'm over 55. Now I'm really freaking close, but the point being that I have to live that long to have spent half of my life out of the military, right?
Yeah.
So it's a perspective when people go, why are you so pedantic? Why are you the way you are? Why are you always looking on the floor and picking up that little piece of trash? But because I did that for 28 years, for Christ's sake, that's me. So I can tell you this, that some of those habits that you and I picked up in all those years of military service, they don't play well in the real world. They do not play well, like it does not work really well when you come home and you tell your mate that, hey, listen, we're doing this and here's where we're going, operational move time is this, blah, blah, blah. Do not do that, guys. I'm just trying to tell you, because it does not work. I'm living proof it doesn't work. But you just have to learn your environment, right? You just have to kind of relearn that environment, and nobody's threatening you, and you need to bring that state down, drop your constant awareness, that constant on guard nature, drop that down and kind of get back into society. And it's a tough thing to integrate back into society, because you look around and you're like, man, you people are worried about the wrong things. Why are you so hopped up about this? But there's 12 people in the world with that problem, but yet there's all these kids that are starving. Let's think about the real important stuff. So yeah, that piece of information, if somebody had helped me, because look, you only ever retire or get out of the military, most cases, one time, right? So doing it is not a perfected art. Like I stumbled through and fell through, and the VA process was ridiculous, and and it's like, how do I get my pay? Wait, the pay doesn't go here, it goes there, because you got to wait till after, and holy mackerel. So it winds up being a stumbling block. What the best thing that I can tell you is get with a brother that has gotten out already and go, okay, listen. And that's what I do here at the center too. So I have the undersea oxygen clinic here, and I do an internship for the last 6 months that people are in the military. The military sends them to me and says, hey, train them to be something different. So not only do I train them in hyperbaric medicine and all this neuro EEG stuff, but I also talk to them about, listen, okay, get copies of your medical records, both sides, because I didn't do both sides. I only did one side, and then I had to go back and try and find the other side, because who the hell knows that they wrote on both sides? It didn't make sense to me. But so little things like that, and how to navigate that process. You got to find somebody that's been through it before and listen to them when it comes to it. So that's my advice. You asked.
Hey man, that's my partner's jaw dropped, and she was literally saying all the things, listening to you in the background. Yeah, I interviewed a saying DJ, but DJ's part of a company called GBRS Group, a bunch of 3 SEAL Team 6 guys that formed a tactical training and other sort of company. But their advice, at least I think it's from them, was surround yourself with a team. Even if the team is just your partner, but surround yourself with a team of people, and your advice correlates that, partner with a brother. What a great saying.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I just learned things the hard way. So, and then I'm like, oh, here, why don't you try what I didn't try? That was stupid. Yeah.
So your accident, your brain injury, how are you going there? I just want to touch on that. Are you recovered?
I'm doing very well, but there are little things in traumatic brain injury. For instance, I had strabismus surgery when I was young, so my eye would wander, right? So it would wander a little bit, and I had that surgery to pull it back together. Well, what happened was you see 1.5 images, but your brain compensates for it. Now my brain stopped all the compensatory reaction, and it's gone back to base operating level, right? So it doesn't have any of those compensating systems. So now I'm seeing 1.5 images. And when I'm reading this line, and then one line down here when I read with my right eye. So I'm going back to visual therapy. I'm still in speech therapy. I still search for words. I try not to get angry, but it's a process, and you're never like, okay, I'm done. I don't think you're ever at that point when you're done. So, but you can get to a point where you're at a pretty good operating level. So I'd say that's where I'm at, is a pretty good operating level. But, I'm not looking for the, oh, woe is Joe. I'm looking for the, hey, we fixed this. So it's the best thing that ever happened to me was my traumatic brain injury. So,
well, and going back to what we said about 20 minutes ago, an operator becoming an educated guy, you literally did the same thing just then, didn't you? We talked about all the science stuff in your lab, your paper, your studies, all these results, but hang on a sec, what about the guy on the ground? And you said something very telling. I try not to be angry. Let's be realistic. But you're talking from a on the ground point of view, which is anybody listening that's been through that would relate. Thank you.
well, I hope so. That's good stuff, man. Well, one thing, if I can steal 2 minutes of the announcement,
Yeah, of
I am
course.
coming out with a novel. I
Oh,
was bored during COVID and I had to write it, right? It's called Secrets in Depth. So I'm coming out with a novel. It will be on www.drdeepsea.com, DRDEEPSEA.com. And it's published. It'll be published. So you can just buy it online, but not from me direct. But but the point being, it's a harrowing tale of uh, Joe and Kirk and all their adventures when they were at Deep Submerged Unit, but the names have been changed to protect the guilty.
Secrets of the Deep?
Secrets in Depth.
Secrets in Depth.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. And as you're saying before, and it'll be in the show notes. So your website was drdeepsea.com?
Yep, DRDEEPSEA.com. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I don't like shameless plugging, but my editor's like, listen, you really got to start putting this out. You got a lot of fans, you got a lot of this, you got a lot of that. I'm like, I don't have fans. She's like, have you looked at your social media? I'm like, oh, whatever.
Hey, but that's the part of the show, and that's the next stage. Your social media. Where do people find you on that? Because that's the new kids' way of checking someone out.
100%. So drdeepsea.com and Dr. Deep Sea on Instagram and Dr. Deep Sea on Twitter, I think. I gotta be honest with you. But yeah, or Joe Dituri, Dituri. And you can just ask away and I'll answer whatever questions you guys have. Your listeners have, and they can just tell me, hey, I heard you on this podcast. I'll be like, all right, great. I entertain these things because people are mystified by this science stuff, and I'm like, okay, you are missing the boat here on this science stuff. It's not that hard, right? So I answer every question that I get. I don't, and nobody answers my stuff but me. So it's not like I have a staff of 1 million, but I do have a guy that does my social media. Thank God, because there's no way I could post that much.
Oh, it's a different world. Look, it's been great chatting to you, Joe, and what a roller coaster ride it's been. I'm glad we hit record straight away.
Hey, listen, man, my currency right now is travel. So if your country's open, I'm down to come out there. Let's get it, right? Let's do something out there in Perth. Kirk and I love Perth, so we'll come out there and do some tag team ketogenic thing.
Oh man, that's awesome. Definitely got some nice whiskey here, and we'll raise a glass.
You are a man after my own heart. Yes, let's do that. Even if we just do that, that's fine.
Hey, great to talk to you, Joe. I'll pause this up. We'll have a quick chat after, but thank you so much for your time. It's been great listening to you.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the listeners. Really appreciate you.